Hello, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the video series where we are reviewing the Site Planning and Design Handbook. And this video is dedicated to Chapter 6. And Chapter 6 is about street and parking design. The impacts of street and parking lots range from the obvious stormwater runoff and localized microclimate issues to isolation of pedestrians and degradation of neighborhoods. Traditional urban neighborhoods were created using a geometry put in place by the municipal authority. Street patterns were established and development occurred within the bounds of the street and infrastructure layout. Block lengths were often fixed or dictated by local topographic features, and neighborhoods were commonly connected to one another through residential connectors as well as arterial connectors. More recent trends have resulted in wider streets, even in neighborhoods, and in neighborhoods being isolated from one another. Most city dwellers are familiar with the heat island effect. Streets absorb solar radiation, and the pavement gets hot during the day and stays warm well into the night. This can result in local temperatures being 10 to 15 Fahrenheit higher than in surrounding areas where you can find trees. So what can be done? Lighter colored pavement materials contribute less to the local heat island effects than dark colored pavement materials, and incorporating more shade in parking lots could become more common. So in general, large areas of paving are necessary accommodations for for the cars, but are at best unfriendly. In most cases, little effort is made to fit the pedestrian into the design. The post-war suburban growth in the 1950s and 1960s gave way to the sprawl of the 1 and 2 acre estates. These trends reflected the strong growing economy and a leisure work ethic that was unprecedented. The environmental costs of the Industrial Revolution were only beginning to be recognized in the 1950s. Parking requirements, for example, are based on a minimum number of required spaces. These design standards have resulted in a huge unused expanses of parking around shopping centers and malls for most of the year. The reserve parking is useful for a few days each year, but the community suffers the impact of the parking lot every day. Alternatives are rarely considered, although a number of them exist. There have been many attempts to separate traffic from pedestrian activities. One attempt was the superblock concept proposed by architects Clarence Stein and Henry Wright and constructed in 1928 in Redburn, New Jersey. In this design, 40-acre superblocks were developed at a density of 4 units to the acre. Access to the houses was through a cul-de-sac arranged around the central green space and pedestrian network. All of the automobile traffic was kept on the outside of the superblock, and all of the pedestrian activity was focused into the green center. The cul-de-sacs were designed to be only 350 to 450 feet long and had a cartway of only 21 feet. No curbs were used, and the right-of-way was 35 feet, including a 7-foot wide utility corridor outside the cartway on both sides of the street. The design resulted in 25% less pavement than a common grid street layout and reduced utility infrastructure costs. In practice, however, the superblock was associated with some observed increase in crime. So since that time, the family car has become an even greater influence on our lives, and we have learned a great deal about how streets work and how drivers behave. Experienced drivers react intuitively to the geometry and appearance of the streets. Posting speed limits is not an effective means of controlling speeds, especially in residential areas where conflicts between vehicles and people can be anticipated. So let's move to the next subsection of Chapter 6, and that is traditional street design. So traditional neighborhood streets were narrower and more pedestrian friendly than many modern subdivision ordinances now permit. And many of the most exclusive and desirable communities in the US feature relatively narrow and curvilinear street networks not found in new developments. Typical streets in recent suburban development are posted at 25 to 35 miles per hour, but are designed for speeds of 45 to 50 miles per hour, and drivers tend to drive faster than the posted speed limit. Research indicates that the pedestrian struck by an automobile traveling 20 miles per hour or less is usually not seriously injured. At 20 to 30 miles per hour, injuries are serious, and at vehicle speeds over 30 miles per hour, the pedestrian is often killed. Although longer side distances were designed to increase the safety of the driver, the actual effect has been to encourage speeding, which has put pedestrians in greater danger. An alternative is to design streets that require drivers to be more alert and drive slower and that are friendlier to pedestrians. We are moving to the next subsection, and that is streets for people. The typical residential streets in new neighborhoods are often separated by wide, over-designed cartways that are expensive to build and maintain. These wide streets encourage excessive speed, increase stormwater runoff, increase the price of new construction, and have higher ongoing maintenance costs. Overcoming some of the effects of the typical street or parking lot might include incorporating the methods of stormwater management and also by including carefully planned larger use of infiltration and vegetation, the physical impacts of paving and traffic can be reduced. Neighborhood block parties and street festivals are similar activities in many cities. Other less obvious but more frequent uses are for the recreation, such as walking, bicycle riding, and playing games. Mitigating the negative environmental impacts of streets should include issues of comfort, safety, access, and traffic control, as well as concerns for the physical impacts. A movement toward complete streets that consider all users in the design and redesign of streets has emerged in recent years in response to these concerns. This data has been endorsed by cycling groups such as the American Association of Retired Persons, the American Planning Association, the American Society of Landscape Architects, and the Institute of Traffic Engineers. The goals of residential street design should be to provide reasonable vehicular and pedestrian access to buildings and residences in a manner that enhances the appearance, security, safety, and enjoyment of the area. In most cases, the greatest direct environmental impact of development results from the construction and use of streets, roads, and parking lots. Design standards rarely include resident satisfaction among the criteria, and they tend to be perspective rather than performance oriented. So please refer to the little chart here in the textbook, and that's what I always recommend, to back up the videos with the textbook, because there are a lot of images and graphics that you need to be familiar with. So here there's a table showing problems with residential streets, and those are traffic accidents, noise, vibration, pollution, traffic speed, non-resident vehicles, appearance, reduction of interaction, storm water runoff, and other problems. So the Institute of Traffic Engineering researchers found that typical street design standards are made up of width dimensions, grade requirements, and horizontal and vertical curves, but very few include performance standards. So imposing design standards that call for segregation of the pedestrian from the street will not solve the problem. Also, the National Association of Home Builders surveyed 110 communities that allow for narrower residential streets to learn from their experience. The majority of communities surveyed reported that narrower streets performed as well as wider streets with regard to maintenance costs and emergency vehicle access. And again, please refer to the chart here. It shows the performance standards for residential streets, and they are adequate maneuvering and access space for the largest vehicle that will use the street, then provide for an efficient level of operating speed, adequate parking provisions, standards for lighting, drainage, and separating vehicles from pedestrians. So street width is more than a function of cartway width. Speeds are reduced as drivers perceive the street to be narrower visually. Increasing parking densities on wider streets has the effect of slowing traffic. Another chart showing typical street widths, and for example, local or residential street has the design speed of 20 to 25 miles per hour, then right-of-way width is 30 to 60 feet, then traffic lane width is 9 to 11 feet, and parking lane width is 8 feet. Then collector or residential streets are 25 to 30 miles per hour, right-of-way is between 40 and 60 feet, traffic lane width is 12, and parking lane width is 10 feet. And the same with a minor arterial, but the traffic speed is between 30 and 40 miles per hour, and the right-of-way is between 100 and 120 feet. So also there is another chart showing street width requirements for fire vehicles. And of course, that is supposed to be wider. So just because the fire trucks need to have access to the building in case of fire. And please refer to the numbers here. Also, another one is street standards for complete streets. Please refer to this, and you can see low volume residential, medium volume residential, front loading, rear loading residential, non-residential, minor arterial, and major arterial roads. So you don't have to memorize those numbers, but you need to be familiar with them. So block length is another important consideration in residential street safety. Studies have found a correlation between block length and vehicle speeds. Vehicle speeds increase with block length. Long sketches of street with no cross streets or traffic controls lead to higher vehicle speeds, and the designer should always consider block length in the calculus of designing streets. So also there is another chart showing residential street design and parking on two sides and parking on just one side of the street. Also another chart showing goals of residential street design. So Please just take a look at those. Non-traditional street design encourages slower and safer vehicle speeds and enhances the quality of neighborhoods by including planting islands, changes in grade, changes in street width, also cul-de-sacs and rotaries. The Dutch concept of wonerf integrates traffic and neighborhoods. This is a distinctly European design that reflects the high density of development and the economy of design found in Europe. Originally, the WUNERF was developed for use in low-income residential areas, but the idea proved to be desirable, so its use spread to neighborhoods of all types. Many existing streets in European cities have been converted from traditional arrangements to WUNERFs. Residents report that they find their environment very desirable because of the park-like atmosphere, the character of neighborhood, and the availability of other amenities. Also, another chart showing the elements of a WUNERF, and some of them are rights of way are narrower. Pedestrian walkways are at the same level and grade as the cartway. Vehicle traffic is permitted, but street design and activities require a reduced speed. Two-way streets are encouraged. One-way streets encourage higher speeds. That's the reason. Also, areas of potential conflict, such as play and social areas, are signaled through the use of trees, planted islands, and signs. And the right of way is given to the pedestrian, and traffic speed limits are usually about 15 miles per hour. Signs at the entrance to a WUNERF inform drivers that they are entering a residential area and that special conditions prevail. Another subsection is traffic calming, and complaints about traffic calming are generally of two types: driver exasperation with what is seen as interference with driving and unintended impacts of the traffic calming device. More complaints are focused on speed bumps, and also speed bump complaints include damage to snow removal equipment, as well as damage to the speed bump, slowed response time of emergency equipment, and accessibility problems for disabled persons. So it is natural for drivers' attention to increase at changes in the road configuration or layout, and designers can incorporate this tendency into the design to increase driver awareness of pedestrians and slow traffic. So traffic calming strategies can be adapted for use on existing streets, which enables them to be employed to address specific issues on traffic or vehicle speed. And again, please take a look. There is a plan showing design of a traffic calming device called the choker, and you can see choker in mid-block. There is an image showing that. Also, you can see the street design, and you can see the narrower street lanes, and you can see a pedestrian-friendly street in Asheville, North Carolina. Also, what else important here is the roundabouts. So roundabouts have emerged in recent years as a way of improving the safety and performance of intersections. The principle of a roundabout is fairly simple. It creates a situation that requires drivers to slow down but not stop and allows traffic to move smoothly through the intersection. The modern design is different from the traditional traffic circle in several ways. So cars entering the roundabout must yield to vehicles already in the roundabout, and entering vehicles must slow down to give way and merge as opportunities occur. As drivers approach the roundabout, their attentiveness is increased as they observe the change in traffic pattern. Again, there are a few images showing that. And we're moving to the cul-de-sac design. and that was developed out of necessity. And now it has become a preferred features for many projects. Originally, dead ends were seen as necessary evils or the result of poor design, necessary only to accommodate difficult topography or property shapes. As residential development has evolved, planners, developers, and real estate professionals also recognize the desirability of the cul-de-sac location. So it provides privacy, absence of through traffic, and a sense of inclusivity and neighborhood among the residents. So the objective of residential cul-de-sac design is to develop an environment that is pleasant to live, safe, it is attractive and desirable from the day construction is finished through its maturity. Administrative constraints in the form of local design ordinances and requirements should serve as guidelines for the early design. The cul-de-sac forms a cluster of residences, providing a sense of privacy or exclusivity that many buyers like and desire. It is possible to arrange several clusters along a single cul-de-sac. In cases such as this, a waiver from a local guideline may be necessary, and cul-de-sac lengths are commonly limited to 1,000 to 1,500 feet. So the most logical argument for limiting cul-de-sac length is the amount of traffic that might be generated from a single point of ingress and egress during peak traffic times. If lot sizes are an acre or more, the guidelines should be adapted appropriately. And here you can see the images showing typical cul-de-sac arrangements. So there is an L-type, T-type, Y-type branch, then circular offset and regular and square end. So take a look at those plans. Also, the design concern on residential cul-de-sacs is how to balance free movement of vehicles and minimize paved surface. The recommended design vehicle for a cul-de-sac should be determined by the project. An industrial park would use a large commercial vehicle as a design vehicle. A project designed to attract families might use a school bus, and a project in an area that receives significant snowfall might design around snow removal equipment. Designing for infrequent or occasional use by larger vehicles is an unnecessary commitment of resources and money, which will have an impact on the quality of the residential environment. Ordinances often require a minimum turnaround radius of 50 feet for the infrequent use of fire trucks and tractor trailers. Most vehicles require much less space, and the result is a large, underutilized turnaround. So here again, you can see the cul-de-sac design using stabilized turf shoulder, and you can see a section showing stabilized turf shoulder detail. Another concern in designing the turnaround is snow removal. An outside turning diameter of 32 feet is adequate for most snow removal equipment without backing up, except in areas with particularly heavy snowfalls. And that is more than 150 inches per year. When we talk about street layout and engineering, the design must consider the vehicle, visual range or limitations of the operator, safety for vehicle operators and pedestrians, climate, geometric configuration, and the character of the overall area. The nature of hillside development generally constrains the standards of classic grid development. Forcing unrealistic standards on an environment that requires special consideration will result in problematic projects. Here you can see another chart. Please refer to that. That's residential street design standards. And you can see the design for low density, ordinarily hilly terrain and high density, ordinary hilly terrain. And that's for right-of-way width, cartway, sidewalk width, then side distance, maximum grade, design speed, and other factors. So please review this chart. We're moving to the next subsection, and that is estimating traffic flow. So a working estimate of traffic flow is necessary to design local roads, internal circulation, and the interface with local collectors. The importance of the estimate of trip generation increases with the size of the project. Traffic flow is affected by a number of factors, but some aspects are fairly intuitive. So, for example, a regional shopping center, a retirement community, and a development directed toward young families or an entertainment complex each has different traffic characteristics. Here you can see a chart showing vehicle trip generation in residential areas with different dwelling types, as well as the minimum design speeds based on average daily traffic or ADT and design hourly volume or DHV. So please refer to that and see the different terrains here and the different numbers for those terrains. So when we talk about vehicle dimensions and turn-in ready, there are different performance criteria, and different design vehicles are selected for different hierarchies of street design and for the future of the area in which the street is situated. Collector streets are designed for larger vehicles such as buses and tractor trailers, and residential streets use a smaller design vehicle. Here there's another chart showing vehicle length, width, wheelbase, and other details and dimensions. So please refer to that. Also, you can see the plan, the map showing minimum turn-in path for passenger car. And there it's shown that the width is 7 feet, then the total length of the vehicle is 19. And that is that was figured out by the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials. Also, another map showing minimum turn path for single unit truck, and that's different dimensions. The width is 8 foot 5, and the length is 30 feet. So you can see how that turns. And there is another chart showing minimum turn path for single unit bus. And we see that the width is 8 foot 5 and the length is 40 feet. Another chart showing the minimum turn path for articulate bus, and that's longer, that is 60 feet in length and the same 8 foot 5 width. And then we can see the semi-trailer intermediate WB40. So that has a length of 50 feet. Another chart showing semi-trailer combination large WB50, and the length is 55 feet. Another chart is WB60, that's a semi-trailer full trailer combination, and that has a length of 65 feet, and you can see that different radius is required. So it may be possible to influence driver perception by installing pedestrian islands in the intersection that can be mounted and crossed by larger vehicles, or to immediately narrow cartway width beyond the radius. These features of a design provide visual interference information to drivers, which in turn results in slower speeds. Again, there are images showing that, and we're moving to the next subsection, that is site design circulation. And that is concerned with providing the operator of a vehicle with safe and adequate forward visual access. Site design is the distance forward that a driver has an unobstructed view of the road. Minimum site distances are determined based on the assumed length of time between the driver recognizing an object in the road and being able to come to a complete stop from the design speed of the road. And there is a formula, so please take a look, and there's a map showing safe site to stop and distance calculations, showing the perceptive distance, reaction time, and braking distance. So please make yourself familiar with those. Side distance on horizontal curves must also be considered, as well as on the slopes. And locating visual obstructions out of the line of sight is necessary to provide safe side distance, even on relatively flat surfaces. Again, here you can see another chart showing the coefficient of friction between tire and road. And there are a few numbers that we need to remember when we design streets and the pavement. Also, charts showing site to stop-in distances and effect on grade on stop-in site distance. When we talk about vertical curves, the vertical curve of a cartway is usually a parabola as opposed to a circular curve. And in most instances, the vertical curve is designed at the center line of the cartway. The following picture shows it here, so you can see the vertical curve circulation. Nothing to memorize, but you need to be familiar with those, and there are some calculations involved as well. So when we talk about horizontal alignment, the design of horizontal curves is concerned with both sight distance and the appropriate radius for the design speed and conditions. The horizontal curve is simply an arc of a circle connecting two tangents. For most local street designs, the center line of the proposed street is used. And when the horizontal direction of the street changes, a horizontal curve is used to make the transition. Here, there's another little map showing the circular curve formula and other details. Intersections are intersections of two or more streets should be carefully designed to provide adequate side distance as well as smooth traffic flow. Grades at intersections should be kept to 3% or less, and on local streets, a clear side triangle of no less than 50 feet is required. When local roads dictate an offset in intersection, at least 100 feet should be provided between intersections. And streets should intersect at 90 degrees whenever possible. We are moving to the final section of chapter 6, and that's parking area design. Parking lots can be massive seas of asphalt, contributing to the degradation of local water quality and increases the urban heat. In addition to the environmental consequences, parking lots are a place where people and vehicles mix fairly freely, a context to which the vehicle is better suited. So there is a chart showing minimum parking requirements and average uses. So for example, for single family homes, typical minimum requirements are 1.5 between 1.5 and 2.5 square feet, and actual average demand is 1.11 square feet. The shopping center is between 4 and 6.5 per 1,000 square feet, and the actual average demand is 3.97. So planning for an average condition may have unacceptable repercussions in some cases. The risk of lost sales because of insufficient customer parking is the most common criticism. Retail businesses make most of their money on the weeks preceding the end of year holidays, and limited parking is seen as having a cost in the form of lost sales. In addition to the retailer's interests, commercial loans for retail development often include parking requirements that exceed those of the already substantial local ordinance. This approach has worked well for retailers, but the undesirable environmental impacts have also costs, which continue every day regardless of whether the parking is used or not. Some strategies have emerged to address the impacts and concerns associated with parking lots. The parking lots contribute significantly to the development cost of a site, and parking space costs range from $1,200 to $1,500 per space, further increasing the cost of development, depending on how many parking spaces you need. So shared parking arrangements have become more widely used and accepted. In shared parking arrangements, land users with complementary parking demands cooperate to lower costs and derive the maximum use from a facility. Design strategies are directed toward minimizing the amount of impervious surface and maintaining the pre-developed rate of infiltration. These objectives are most often accomplished in three ways. The first one is reducing parking space size. Then the second is requiring smaller spaces dedicated to compact cars. And the third one is designing spillover parking with pervious surfaces. Here you can see the typical parking space detail. So the width is 8 foot 10 and the length is between 18 and 20 feet. Also, another map showing revised parking space details. So the width is 9 foot 10 and the length is 18 feet. So when we talk about wayfinding, that can be a challenge. And designs should include subtle wayfinding aids to assist users. This may be of particular importance in very large parking areas or in areas that often used at night. Parking areas, especially those with unique layouts dictated by site constraints, may need to include signage or pavement marking to assist drivers and pedestrians. And those can be parking lots by the airports or hospitals or large shopping centers. Here you can see a few more details. You can see accessible parking details, universal parking detail, and also you can see the 90-degree parking two-way aisle detail. Another one is 45-degree parking detail. You can see the distances here, and you can see one-way and two-way aisles here as well. So when we talk about accessible parking space requirements, typically when the total number of parking spaces in a lot are between 1 to 25, one accessible space is required. When it's between 26 to 50, 2 accessible spaces are required, 51 to 75, 3 spaces, then 76 to 100, 4 spaces, 101 to 150, there are 5 accessible spaces required, 151 to 206, and so on. So when we talk about pavement design, the pavement materials are usually dictated by local ordinance and are one of the 2 types, asphalt or bituminous concrete or Portland cement concrete. So the functional difference between the choices lies in how road is transferred through the material to the subbase. And the design of pavement for most streets is also prescribed by local ordinance and includes required pavement thickness, materials, and cross section. Designers should review local standards prior to incorporating them into their design. So the increase in runoff from paved surfaces and the necessary construction costs, and land used for detention basins to offset the increase can be influenced through the site that has porous paving. Porous paving allows runoff to pass through and infiltrate back into the soil and groundwater. The permeability of some pavements is as high as 56 inches per hour. And you can see that is the data based on the information from Metropolitan Area Planning Council. There is a chart showing that. You can see required parking for various land uses, and you can see different details for residential, commercial, educational, medical, public buildings, recreation, industrial, and churches as well. So a few pictures showing different types of parking. Porous paving uses a cement paste to coat aggregate, which is poured in place. The absence of sand in the mixture allows for 20 to 35% void space in the material. And the Portland Cement Association reports that this allows for permeability of 3 to 8 gallons per minute. Porous cement has been used in the southeastern US for about 20 years, and it has started to be used in the north and west in recent years as well. Another chart showing asphalt pavement thickness for parking area, and that's for the passenger cars. And you can see also there is an image showing how that is designed. Another image showing cement, concrete porous asphalt installation. So critical elements involved in the installation of porous cement concrete include control of the cement water mixture and compaction. The system works by utilizing a paste of cement and water to bind the aggregate together. If the paste is too wet, it will not it will not have the strength necessary to withstand traffic. If it's not compacted correctly, the aggregate will not bind together properly, and porous cement concrete should be installed by properly trained contractors. So another picture showing that, and you can see different variations and different designs. Maintenance of the porous surface is limited. Some experience with porous systems has shown that the use of ice melting chemicals and snow plowing can be reduced because the underlying stone retains heat and ice and snow melt away. So another chart showing summary of issues related to various types of alternative payments. Nothing to remember, but something really interesting to see. And also there is a section showing typical parking lot paving detail, showing the subbase, the binder course, and surface wearing course that is all on top of the compacted soil. The environmental impact of paved parking areas can be substantial. In general, the impacts are similar to those of the streets, and increased stormwater runoff, excessive heat retention, and high risks to pedestrians are found in degrees at least equal to those on the streets. Again, another detail, the section showing mountable curb detail, and also a minimum amount of planting surface area for a parking lot is about 5% of the parking area. And you can see the curb detail, and you can see the planted landscape buffer between the residential area and a shopping center that is required. So islands should be designed for snow storage in those areas where large snowfalls are common. And in these areas, it may be appropriate to space the islands out and make them deeper or wider to allow for greater efficiency in plowing and snow removal. Also, another detail showing the planted islands in parking lot and how that is located, and you can see the difference in the slope. So the use of pervious parking for commercial development presents some challenges that must be addressed. Pervious park in general does not perform well under heavy loads, such as large delivery vehicles or buses, and large snow removal or maintenance vehicles might also prove problematic. In such cases, restrict pervious paving to areas with light traffic, such as parking bays, and use a more substantive paving profile in heavy use areas. So that was it for our chapter 6. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in chapter 7.